And that's the fifth thing. To have the partnership with teachers, but no veto. And the sixth, which leads on to this, and is something I believed before I became Prime Minister, and I now believe on the basis of experience of having tried to run a modern education system, as we do in the UK, from local government, but central government sets the framework. There should be zero tolerance of failure. I don't believe that the fact that a child is from a poor or disadvantaged background means that it's impossible to educate them or for them to be educated. And, you know, I used to have this debate with my own party sometimes, who would say, well, the reason why the schools are bad is that these kids come from bad homes and broken down areas and neighborhoods. And I would say, well, we should try and change that by regenerating the neighborhoods and putting money into investing in the communities. But I will never accept that you can't have a good school even in a bad area, because you can. And we went, and actually we did it. And you will see, you will find bad areas were good schools. And the question is how you take the lessons of that and spread it out across the school system, because there is no greater social injustice for any child than the absence of a good education. You know, the poverty they can overcome, the poor housing they can overcome, even the poor parenting sometimes they can overcome, but only if they're given a chance. And education is their chance. And so if we don't give them that chance, we are depriving them of the single thing that is most important for their development and for a just society. And the seventh and final lesson is this. The commitment to education says something profound about a nation. A nation that nurtures its young people is a nation that knows what matters. And I came to power with, when they asked me what my priorities were, I said I have three priorities: education, education, and education. And look, we made improvements, we still got huge challenges. But I wanted education not just to be valued in itself, not just to be valued by the children that hopefully we were giving a better education to. I wanted it to say something about our country, to say that we are a country that in this interdependent, fast-changing world knows what matters, is open to that world, and is prepared to educate our children accordingly. And I always thought of education not just as a policy, but as a vision and symbol of a different type of Britain operating in a different type of world. And I am sure the challenges in many ways here in Brazil are infinitely greater than the challenges I faced. But I also think some of the same lessons and some of the same principles will apply. And no country that is going to succeed today can succeed unless it puts education right at the top of its agenda. So let me conclude just by saying this, that, you know, I also, when I reflect on where the passion about education comes from, you know, I know how lucky I've been with my own education. One of the things I used to do often as Prime Minister, and still do sometimes, I go and address school assemblies, which is always a fascinating thing for a politician to do. Because, you know, kids are all sat there, they sort of look at you, think you come from Mars, really. So they're quite surprised that you're even human in a small way. But, you know, they get bored easily. So you've got to keep your message to the point. And I always used to say to them that I was actually not a great student at school at all. But I had the advantage of great teachers, and I was lucky enough to do far better, really, than I deserved to do. And that even though they may regard their teachers as a pain, and the discipline of the school as a nuisance, you know, I used to tell them this story about my science exams. When I sat my physics exam at school, the examiner said that he'd never come across a worse paper in his 25 years of examining. And physics, I couldn't get at all. I just couldn't understand it. It just literally passed me by. And I've spent the rest of my life regretting this, because I know why I didn't concentrate, I didn't think it was important. And, you know, when you tell them that basically you failed an exam, they kind of think, well, he's Prime Minister, so, you know, there's something to hope for there. And I know what education did for me. I know I could never have achieved without it. And I still basically believe, even after my 10 years as Prime Minister and all the different issues I've been engaged in, that what I was fortunate enough to have, it should be our duty to give to others too. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's very generous. Obrigado. You're going to ask me some questions?
For you.
Yeah?
Yes.
3?
3 stupid questions.
Maybe it's better I stand. But, I mean, in the interest of discipline, I'm prepared to sit if that's what you want. No, okay. No, okay. But I'll take this. Oh, it's in English. Right.
This one is from Felipe Martin. And the question is, Brazil has a good perspective for economic growth next year. However, this rate can be reduced by several factors, including shortages of skilled labor. In your opinion, how must universities pose themselves strategically to meet this demand for professionals to maintain the rate of growth, but without giving up vocational training in line with global perspectives?
I think you've got to have a balance between these two things. I mean, I would say that in the UK, I never felt that we'd quite got the vocational side right, actually. And just before the end, we started a system which was of a far closer partnership between the business community and vocational skills. At the same time, I think education's not just about learning a trade. You know, it's a broader thing than that. So I think you need a balance. I think you can find that balance. But I really do think that we've kind of got to get over the notion that the private sector and the public sector inhabit two different spaces today. Actually, there's a lot of synergy that can come together on vocational education and even on the broader education too. Thank you.
Hello? We have the student sitting right over here. Felipe?
Oh, hi.
The next one is from Marisa Prado. And the question is, what will be the contribution of education in Brazil's new scenario for the improvement of capabilities? And the question revolves around conciliating sustain economic development with the fragility of natural resources and social inequity?
It's the trouble with students. They got a bit smart nowadays. So much more respectable than in my day. Actually, sorry, I just digressed for a minute. The thing is, when I was a student back in the 1970s, it was the days of, you know, the Rolling Stones and all that. I had hair down here. And unfortunately, there are still some pictures that survive. And whenever my children are being difficult with me, and I'm telling them off, they get out these pictures and say, no matter what we've done, we have never looked like that. So, I think that you know, that there should be a confluence, really, between tackling issues to do with the natural resources, social inequity, and advanced education. You know, first of all, I think education is the great liberator from social inequity. Secondly, I think that it's only an intelligent and educated view of the environment that allows people to understand the need to balance short-term exploitation with the long-term good of a country. And the third thing is that I think for those issues that are to do with a country's future, there is literally nothing that is going to be done better with a poorly educated workforce. So, I mean, I think that, yes, it is hard to balance, also priorities and so on. But around the world today, there is a developing social and economic link between education, environmental responsibility, and social advance. And people are recognizing there is that economic and social link together. And so, you know, for us, certainly, we found also that the better educated, the more concerned people were about the environment, and certainly the reductions in social inequity, the increases in social mobility came largely through education. That's what I would say.
Thank you. The last one is from Renan Oliveira. It says, Brazil is still a country with a large contingent of people with little schooling. Most people have less than 5 years of formal schooling. How can sustainable economic development be conciliated in a context such as this? Could you mention some international experience capable of accelerating the educational level?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. And here's the good news, okay? I mean, the challenge here is very obvious for the reasons you give. You've still got a large number of people who don't go through all the processes of education, and the quality of education can sometimes be insufficient. But round the world, there are systems that are working better. You know, you can go to the Nordic countries, you can go to parts of Europe, parts of the UK even, you can go to parts of the US, you can go to countries out in the Far East, and you can see there are examples of change, right, for the better, educational progress being made. They do tend to have the characteristics that I've been speaking about today. In other words, there's a real sense of commitment. There's a belief in innovation in the way education happens. There's a belief that your providers of education have to be partners, but they don't get a veto over the whole process. And there's beyond doubt a sense that where you provide that quality education within a disciplined environment, kids will respond to it. And, you know, the fascinating thing is, I mean, I could take you to schools in the UK now. We're our new academy schools. And we set up these schools in the most deprived areas of the UK.